Hello and welcome to What's the Difference? Cryptids, Myths, and Folklore. Today we have a topic that was suggested by a viewer named Space Pirates. It is an idea that I've been tossing back and forth for quite some time. Within the cryptid and paranormal world, many accounts come by way of folklore, but a few are confused why many of these creatures from myths aren't considered always cryptids. I am certain that there are quite a few of my viewers who are able to make the distinction between the two, but even as such, the line can be a bit blurry. With our channel, I have taken pride in the fact that our content is welcoming to all types of people, and as such, may even reach those who are new to the ideas of cryptids outside of maybe Bigfoot or Nessie. So much like the video I made about what a cryptid is, I enjoy covering topics like this, so I can further explain some of the ideas that many of us, including myself, may take for granted or not even factor in what differences there are. As simple as this topic seems to be, it may be deceptively more complex. So let's crack open some old books and unfold some ancient manuscripts and see how they are different. Before I really get into this, I wanted to note that if we're going to consider myths and folklore, we also need to include another group, known as legends. To me, all three hold a particular meaning, but my view may not be completely accurate. Myths are where most stories involving fantastical properties exist. In these writings, they frequently have references to strange-looking beasts and creatures, but normally those stories involve the need for someone to step forward and handle that being. These stories are very similar to folk tales, but in the same aspect, they are a bit different. You will see this comparison a lot when it comes to drawing the line between story types. Myths aren't always about true events, but they can also be, but their main purpose is to normally explain how things are or why they exist. Myths normally entail actions by deities or even people with supernatural power. Their main purpose is to tell a particular event or series of actions that affect a group of people or culture. They can entail certain truths, but a lot of it is considered writer's interpretation, for the lack of a better term. Now, legends are very similar to this, and many consider that myths branch off of legends. However, legends are mainly focused on the deeds or acts of a particular person, but it sometimes can entail a group of people. Legends frequently follow the path of a person or person's heroic deeds in a way of being the best of the best. These stories are pretty much grounded in facts and truth, but a certain license is given to waver outside of facts in order to make things more grander than they may have been. The reason behind their existence is to appreciate a person's actions and is important to the people that it directly is relating to. Now, folk tales are somewhat similar, but they are also different. Frequently, folk tales are spread from person to person and talk about events or stories of information that stands to be lost to time. Yes, these stories frequently involve fairy tales and urban legends, but there normally is some truth or message behind each tale. I guess to put it easier, folk tales can encompass all sorts of stories, heroic feats, tragedies, life events, and even creatures. On face value, even as I write this, the lines are very blurry, and it really feels like the terms are fairly interchangeable. However, this is why I have always simplified my viewpoint for what each one stands for. I may be wrong, but so far it hasn't led me astray. Legends are stories about a person's heroic events. Myths are about things that happened and how they became the way they are. And folk tales are for preserving old stories with a main focus on cautioning the listener about their actions. This is why I think so many people get confused when looking up the definitions between them. All three terms serve a greater purpose, but they do it in different ways. Legends basically show a person how they could be or what goals they could achieve. Myths attempt to explain common questions in language that is more palatable to a wide range of people rather than just reading a history book. Whereas folklore are normally fun stories that when you get to the root of them, serve as a cautionary tale. To explain that further, many folk tales involve creatures or spirits roaming about a certain forest or body of water. And rather than the storyteller just coming right out and preaching, "Do not enter those areas because they are naturally dangerous," They weave a fantastic tale with all kinds of beasts and monsters that enjoy causing humans harm. In a sense, it takes the conversation from a person saying "don't go there" to allowing the listener to come to the conclusion that they probably shouldn't go there. Those stories are a brilliant form of reverse psychology. Yet in saying that, I do want to note that, as previously mentioned, the folktales can be rooted in truth. So maybe some kind of unknown beast does make its home in the forest that is being talked about. So after all that, you may realize how they are all different, but still are curious how cryptids are involved. With all three of these stories I have mentioned, many of them include various unnatural beasts, creatures, and monsters. When talking about cryptids, they are frequently described with features that are unknown to exist outside of their realm. For instance, the Jersey Devil is said to look like a horse with bat wings, glowing eyes. Sometimes it has creepy horns or antlers, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it can breathe fire, sometimes it doesn't. If we were to remove the oddities in description, we are still left with a horse with wings that has glowing eyes. How many animals that are recognized by science look close to that? None. With that said, we must jump back to creatures in myths and legends, and you would not be wrong in saying that they should be considered cryptids as well. However, for the most part, they aren't, and rightfully so. Cryptozoology is the study of animals that are currently unknown to the scientific world. As of such, cryptids are simply unknown animals. In both of those definitions, it never states the creatures are animals from fairy tale or that they don't exist. It simply states that they currently aren't known to science. You could argue that creatures from myth, such as the manticore or griffin, could follow the same pattern. At face value, this seems to be the case, but they all have a particular problem, and that is simple: sustainability. Outside of their specific stories, there is no other mentions of them existing, and this includes travelers' reports to the area where they are said to be active. Whereas reports of Bigfoot, Mothman, the Jersey Devil, and all the rest have a starting report and then other sightings that have spread all over. You may say the Jersey Devil was a bad example, and it is to a degree, but even as such, a locally known cryptid has been seen flying around the surrounding states. Maybe it isn't as widespread as Bigfoot or even the Mothman, but it does lend credence to its existence based on being seen outside of its origin. You may think that this distinction is simply due to localized myths being almost impossible in today's era of technology, but that isn't the case. Creatures that are described as what we know as Sasquatch or Bigfoot have existed in native legends for centuries and are still seen today. Also, what makes the Sasquatch important is that not only is it seen in localized areas, but there are also stories of the same creature from all over the world dating back many, many years. Yes, stories could have been spread around, but it seems hard to believe that pretty much every culture was given the same story around the same time. This is considering that there are very few locations around the world where a Bigfoot doesn't have some basis in their ancient stories. Now, Nessie is an oddity within this realm. It was seen in one location, and it has an origin point, so that it should rule a mythological beast. Yet, stories about a creature looking very similar to Nessie has existed around other bodies of water from all over the globe for many years, some even predating the ones from Scotland. When it comes to cryptids, the stories about them often come without the, dare I say, fanfare of legends, myths, and folklore. Most don't exist with an air of grandeur or talking about a fantastic event or heroic acts. They simply are written in a way of a person seeing a strange creature and they run away in terror. These stories don't include parables or showcase a deeper meaning. They simply exist. Granted, a good number of them could fall under the folktale characteristic of being a cautionary tale, although the follow-up encounters sort of debunk this theory. To be clear, I picked on the manticore and griffin, but that doesn't mean that they couldn't have existed at one time, and possibly could also have been a cryptid. The problem is there is nothing to corroborate those stories with. There aren't any other sightings, no other evidence, simply nothing. While many cryptids also share this issue, further sightings are what tie them together. Honestly, in thinking about this, the only creature that I can think of that branches all forms of stories and that of cryptids, would be dragons. While there are very few, if any, recent sightings, and when I say recent, I mean in the last 50 to 100 years, they do have the peculiar habit of being mentioned in different cultures' texts. Personally, I don't think dragons ever existed. Again, this is my personal belief. But it is puzzling to me as to how so many cultures knew of them. While I'm thinking about this topic, it left me with a simple conclusion. Yet, I realized a really simple way of thinking about legends, myths, folktales, and cryptids. Here's the big question I thought to ask myself. Had the Mothman only been sighted around the time of the Silver Bridge collapse, would it be considered a cryptid? It pains me to say it, but probably not. Certainly in that location it would have been considered a cryptid, but outside of Point Pleasant, it probably would be considered more of a local legend or folktale. In saying that, it has been spotted quite a few times after that tragedy, not to mention, just off the top of my head, in Illinois, Michigan, Pennsylvania, England, Japan, if it is to be believed, which I don't, in Russia, as well as other locations that are slipping my mind at the moment. These further sightings pull it from a simple scary story told around a campfire to being a full-fledged cryptid. Some may have an issue with my assumption that multiple sightings influence the creature's existence. But think of it this way. Any scholarly paper that is written isn't considered fact unless it includes sites and sources. The same applies here, I think. In conclusion, I hope I didn't cause more confusion and help to clarify the topic. I do want to note as a final thought that some beings found in myth are considered cryptids. Again, off the top of my head, the two that came to mind are the Tatzelworm from the Swiss Alps, and even though it is a spirit being, the jinn. The jinn is quite prominent in Arabia, and to this day there are even laws in place when it comes to dealing with the entity. From what I read recently, it is forbidden to deny the existence of jinn in the Muslim beliefs. I don't follow that faith, but if any of my viewers do, I would be interested to know how widespread the belief in the being is. Well, I also wanted to state that while some may feel this might not have been my most interesting video, I feel it serves a really good purpose. As stated earlier, while many of us may know about cryptids, it is important to share our knowledge of the topic with those who may just be dipping their toe into the subject. Last week I was really bad at replying to my comments, and I am very sorry for this. I am not trying to excuse this, but I started building my new computer, and it took me a lot of time with transferring all my old files and getting everything set up so I'd be ready to make a new video this weekend. I will respond to each and every one of you though. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this, and also, if you would, could you share my videos with someone you know who may be interested in this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later!